Okay. So yeah, let me know. I don't. We can start wherever you guys are ready. So I don't know if you have given it a little bit of a start or from the beginning. So why don't we just see what you have and talk about where you are stuck and how it can help.
Yeah, so I'll start sharing my screen because I have it here. We have like all of the different blocks set that we want to use. It's my thing that I'm going through right now is getting it in the right order and getting it so that every screen runs. Like, so I'm just having trouble with like the mandatory aspect of it and only getting it in the correct order.
Yeah, we'll start with that. All right.
Yeah. So this is everything that we have. What I've been doing just because like was an issue with me like starting off. What I've been doing is just going block by block and then putting it in a different playground and just making sure that each block is just correct so that I wouldn't run into that issue. So all of these are good. It's just there's no um, mandatory block that's making it all run in the right order.
Okay.
That's the only thing I'm having issues with.
Yeah. Um, that's a great question. So see, I do see a syntax error there in the corner. Let's run and see what that is. See if we can find that first. Well, I mean, it looks like it's working. So maybe it just needed to be refreshed. So you're getting your questions. So it's just changing the order of the questions that you want to.
Yeah, just making sure that it's going in the right order.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what the syntax error was. That's interesting. It might have just been that you saved it and then it wasn't refreshed. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see
that
it's
looks like
gone now.
exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So to control the question order, what I like to do is put a block at the top of the interview,
Okay.
very top, and we're going to do a couple things. One is first, let's include the basic questions file because you'll need that soon. So let's do a new block that starts with include as the first keyword in it. And then a new line. And it's going to be indented with the dash. And it's going to be docassemble dot, and then MA virtual court with capital MAV, and then virtual, yeah, and then capital C, then a colon, and then basic dash questions dot YML. And it's plural. And we don't actually want that space there between virtual court and basic questions. I know a lot of places we do use that, but not here. It's not, this isn't a YAML thing here. It's like it's taking this whole thing and saying, look in the virtual core package for this file named basic questions. That's what we're doing basically.
Okay.
All right, so I like to put that at the top. So that way any questions I have that I wrote myself take priority over it. So just a refresher, this file here, the basic questions file, it's like a library of questions that we can use in our interview. When docassemble is looking for which question to use, it will always use the one that comes later in the file. And you can kind of pretend like this is inserting, let me grab an arrow here. So like this basically inserts everything in the basic questions.yaml file right into your interview, right in this spot.
Okay.
And then it, like this question, if it, let's scroll down a little bit to see what it's doing. So like it's defining a button called continue. That's really all it's doing. Okay. If it were to, well, let's look at this as a better example. This is defining original court date. So if I needed something that needed original court date, this is going to take priority, even if there was another question that was exactly the same in
Okay.
the basic questions file. That's why the order matters. Just wanted to put that out there as a starting point. Okay, let's go back to the top of the file. So now we're going to have a new code block right after this include block. So that just starts with the keyword code. and then a space and that vertical pipe. Now our next line is going to be indented. And what's coming here is all Python code. But what we're using the Python code for is just to trigger certain questions being asked. Because if we use a variable here, it needs to get that variable defined. Docassemble will go and find that variable.
Okay.
And this is the code block I use to control the order of my questions. So actually, before we even go any further, let's add a new line here on line 3 and make that mandatory. And it'll work without it, but it's good habit to use it correctly. So capital T for true.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what we need to do is find a way to trigger all of these screens being asked. And to do that, each screen needs to have a variable that we're triggering. You want to start with this very first question here, removing a default judgment, right? Probably.
Well, this is just like more of an information screen.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and have that be the first screen that happens, even though it's you want it to show the screen. So we need to give it a variable in order for it to be shown.
Okay.
And the way to do that is we actually don't need this button here when the only thing is continue. So let's get rid of that.
Okay.
And one of the main reasons for us to do that is because we actually are using the word next in our interview instead of continue. That's like a style thing that we decided on.
All right.
We can get rid of mandatory true because we're going to trigger this a different way. To give a screen like this that doesn't ask the user for any information, a variable that we can refer to in our code block, we use the keywords continue space button space field. So you're just missing a U there and continue when you have a chance.
Wait, so what am I typing?
Field, continue button field.
Field.
Field is what docassemble calls variables most of the place. So we're giving this, it's a field that gets set when you press the continue button. It doesn't do anything else except click continue, we set a variable. So I would give this something that makes sense for what it means. Well, so you might call it like remove default intro.
Okay.
You can just call it intro too, but you know, just makes it easy if you. And I like to use whole words with spaces, so an underscore between remove and default. Okay, and now let's copy that variable and put that in our code block.
Do I have to put a dash?
I just do Control V to paste it. No dashes. This is just a block of Python code.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just follows regular Python rules, which I know that may not mean anything depending on how much, but you had some other code blocks that you figured this out. It's the same thing. You can have more than one line here. You can use if statements, and we can practice a little bit with that too. Let's make a new line before this, because I want to show you one more thing, which is how to work with the basic questions file. So after it's going to be same indent as line 6. Let's make a new line before line 6 though.
Okay.
And we want to trigger the first basic questions intro. So it's actually just literally that written out, basic underscore questions underscore intro underscore screen. I think it's 4 words if I remember right. And don't forget the S there because question is plural. So now let's try, oh, and that's an N, not an M. Okay, let's try running it and just see what we have so far. It's always good to try small changes. All right, so now we have our intro. And you get your second intro there.
Nice.
Okay. So So that's as far as we've gotten, because that's the last screen that we made mandatory.
All right.
Let's go back to our playground here. And there's some questions that you can take out that you have written because they're actually in the basic questions file, like questions about like what's the person's name, the name of the court. But it was good practice to write those anyway. Let's go down, and do you have an attachment block in here yet where we have the Word document? Is that something you're going to probably want to do kind of in parallel with this?
You mean the Word document that we're filling out using this?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Okay. Before we even get to that, actually, let's see. You must have another mandatory block somewhere, right? Let's look for that and take that out.
This one.
There we go. So what would you think would be the way for us to trigger this screen, just by analogy? We haven't done one like this, but if it makes sense yet to you, tell me. What would be a way to make this screen get shown?
To label it something and then add it to the first block.
We could do that. That would be a way. So why did we need the label for the first one?
Because it was undefined.
So what we did with the label is we gave the screen a variable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this screen, you already are asking for variables. So we actually could just copy one of these variables and have that be the way to trigger the screen. So that's what I usually would do.
Just one of them is enough to trigger the whole screen?
Yes,
Okay.
because it needs to show the whole screen to get that one variable defined. So that'll be enough. So that's your basic strategy, to keep going like this, to go through and to sometimes you might use an if statement if a screen is optional. I don't remember if there's any branching in this form really.
I don't think there's any optional ones though. There are some branching, just depending upon whether or not they filled out an answer, because that's like a part of the document that they have to check off whether or not they have an answer, like that they already filed to the court or one that they're planning on filing to the court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that could be kind of just like radio buttons maybe, right?
Yeah. I'd have some like if statements going on.
Okay.
So like, yeah, have you filed an answer? And then there's a code if statement. And if they say no, then it goes to you must file an answer late.
Okay. Let's put our attachment block at the end. Let's start with that.
Okay.
And just get you like kind of started with working with that. So yeah, if you wanted to scroll down to the examples, you can start with one of those, except, well, never mind. There's not a good example of a docx file in there is what I'm remembering now. So we'll just do it from scratch.
Okay.
So we're going to just type the word attachment and then a colon. What comes next are a bunch of keywords that are just also going to be start with a colon. So there's no pipe on this one. The pipe, what comes after pipe is always text, or like a bunch of text, not other keywords, basically, is one way to remember. So a tab here, it's all under the attachment. And the minimum we need is docx template file. Lowercase, actually. Almost all the keywords are lowercase. And it's going to have a space for each word. There's no reason why you would know that. That's just, sometimes there's underscore, but almost always there's none for keywords.
Okay.
And a colon. And then the name of our template file, which you might find if you scroll down that variable list on the right. Have you uploaded it yet? You haven't uploaded it yet.
I haven't uploaded yet with the variables put into the actual docx yet.
That's okay. Yeah. It doesn't have to have, if it's up there at all, then that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it is though.
Okay. It would be at the very bottom if it is. So we can just check really quickly and then see. Okay, so motion to vacate form looks like it's there.
Yeah, okay.
So it's going to go on the same line, on line 133. Just make sure there's a space between it. So you can just click on that. There you go, you got it. And then on the next line, the other minimum thing we need is we want to be able to work with this as a file, as a variable, because we're going to send it as an attachment. We're going to also show it on the last screen with the preview. So we have to give it a variable name. So the keyword for that is just the word variable.
Okay.
And let me make sure that it's not variable space name, because I have to remember myself. It is variable space name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the same, like this name right here?
Yeah, variable space name. So give it a space before you get to the colon and then the word name.
Oh, okay.
Name, yeah, don't forget name before the colon.
Okay.
The word name. I realize that's very vague, sorry, because I couldn't
Oh, okay.
variable name or it's
yeah,
the word variable name, the whole thing.
All right.
Perfect. And now we give it a variable name that makes sense to us. So I would call it like motion attachment underscore attachment. Because it's the variable name for our attachment file. Okay, we need to actually show this to somebody. So we'll create a new screen that actually has the download. So online, let's make a new block. I would like it to be before the attachment block because of how we refer to it. So let's do it on line 131. We'll start a new block there.
Okay.
It's going to be a question, but it's going to be an ending screen. So let's also give it the event keyword. That can come before question is usually where I do. I like it at the top so that you can see what it is before you start reading the question. And I'm not that creative. I usually just call it download. Okay. So we can look at some examples. Like you can copy this placeholder language that you would want to put here from the TRO.
Okay.
But we're going to start with just, let's make a question block and we'll say something really simple. Like, so question, we're going to put the space in the vertical pipe because it's going to come text. It's going to come next. And I would say like, really briefly, like your form is ready to download. And you're going to probably want to look at the language we did for the TRO, which is a little bit more worked out. And you can just literally copy that and just change a few things. But it's a good exercise to go through doing it from scratch first, I think. So let's make a new line and let's make a sub question. And then again, the pipe and the space in the pipe. And one way to show an attachment is to just reference it inside Mako tags, so the $ and the curly braces. And it goes right next to the $. So we called, do you remember what we called that attachment, the variable name for the attachment?
Motion attachment.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you think we would trigger this screen in our code block that was up at the top?
We would put the word download.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so there's one.
Missing in there, yeah. And missing the letter. Yep. Okay, so one more thing. If you wanted to show, let's go back down to our question one more time. The last one, the one that can download someone from. If you want it to actually show, like, it shows some built-in things which are helpful. Like you can have an email, you can send the file by email.
Mm.
And to get that to show, we have to put a way to show the attachment on the screen that's built in. So after line 137, let's make a new line and go back to the beginning of the line. So we're going to write the word attachment space code. And then space, and then it's motion attachment we're going to reference again here. Okay, so now let's try running it through. It's going to show 3 screens, and then we'll get the file at the end, which won't do anything yet, which is okay. So let's just do save and run, just so you can see what that looks like.
Okay.
So this is a bug there with the white box, which I'm trying to figure out if I can get Jonathan to fix. I think he's the best person to do that. But if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see we have it in a couple different formats as a PDF. So you can click on that PDF and view it.
Cool.
And we can, if we go back to the mass access tab there, you'll see we could also email it to ourselves.
Awesome.
So, okay, let's add our first couple of variables to the docx file now. And then I'll show you one more thing, which is how to use some of the built-in variable name standards, because I think those will help. Both will help you not have to write questions that we've already written, and it's a good thing to become familiar with.
Mm.
So yeah, let's start by editing that file.
Okay. Do I have to edit it within docassemble, or can I just edit it in Microsoft Word?
Just Microsoft Word.
Okay.
All right, so the way that we put in a variable into a docx file is really similar to what we did inside the interview file, the YAML file. But instead of using $ curly brace, we use 2 curly braces.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's very much the same. So yeah, you had a variable for county, so we could start with that. I would leave
I would
the
just put it where
SS.
this line would go, right?
Let's just delete the line, yeah. We don't really need that anymore. So this is the interesting thing with the form like this, like, right, like we don't want the word county there either, right? Because that's like a prompt for someone who's handwriting it. They don't really want that. And it's in a table, which is interesting, but that should be fine. We want to just delete the contents of it, not the actual cells. So I'd do cancel, and you might have to remove, you're not removing a line, you're removing probably that is a cell that has highlighting. Does that make sense? Not highlighting, but a border on it, on just the bottom part of the cell. That's my guess.
Okay.
So what are you using to edit? It's actually Word. So that would be under layout, I think, or table design, or no border. You can choose no border right there. That would work. Yeah. And then just delete the word county underneath. And then, yeah, go in that cell. Perfect. Okay. So just put the two curly braces, 2 in a row, 2 curly braces. Oh, both that are opening.
Oh, both opening?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a space is good, have it. And then you're gonna want to play around with the size of this. That actually looks okay. I guess it's Scaramond 11, should be okay. So then just put in, what did you use as your variable name?
It was county name, county underscore name.
Okay, so let's start with that. And then closing curly brace. So that's how you insert a variable. When you're using docassemble, if you're mostly doing docassemble forms in Word, it's kind of helpful to turn off the grammar and spelling check because it'll just be more in the way than helpful for you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
that's one thing you might consider. And
Okay.
that should be under the word backspace stage view, which I think is if I'm not actually not sure how you get to it on an Apple. Probably up here under if you click the Apple icon. No, under the word, maybe there. Preferences, probably. And then spelling and grammar, yeah. Interesting. So I would just turn off check spelling as you type.
Okay.
And you don't forget how to turn that back on if you like that, but it will be really just distracting for you when you're editing a bunch of templates.
Okay.
So you can close that now. So we got rid of the red squiggle. Okay, let's, so that is how to add a variable. And we have these checkboxes, which I think have to be handled a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
That was something Fanola, and let's zoom in on that and see what's going on there. Is that another table for the formatting?
Where the
Yeah,
boxes or where this is?
where the box is.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to tell, I guess. I don't see it. It doesn't show me the table in the toolbar anymore, so I guess it's not a table, which is good. It's easier to work with. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I do checkboxes, usually in a document like this, is just with using square brackets and an X if it's to mark that it's been checked. That's the easiest way.
Okay.
So let's just write it out longhand first, and then on my to-do list is to make a function that makes this a little easier for you.
Okay.
So we're gonna just put one more type of way to work with a file is using, we talked about double curly braces are for variables. And then I don't know if you remember inside a question with Mako if statements, which you may or may not remember, we used a percent sign at the beginning of the line. It's kind of similar for this.
Okay.
So it's going to be, but curly brace percent symbol for when we're
Okay.
doing like a special command that's not just putting a variable in. So this is going to be an if statement. So we use curly sign percent if.
All right. And I'm putting that where?
Right. We're going to replace that empty box there.
Okay.
And do you know what would check to see if they needed to get permission to file a new answer? Let's just copy that from your playground. So this is the kind of the back and forth you'll be doing.
Yeah. I believe it's answer
Yes, no.
Yeah. Answer yes, no. So if they answer false to answer yes, no, then it would be they'd have to file an answer late or permit me to file an answer late.
Okay.
What do I do? Like equals
percent.
false? Oh, percent.
Mm-hmm. And then the closing curly brace. So that's a style thing. There's nothing wrong with writing equals, double equals false, but you don't need to because it's already a true or false. That might be confusing. I think it is confusing for a lot of people, but it's just a little neater and easier to read if you just have this style, if the thing you're checking in an if statement is already a true or false variable, you don't have to do the double equals false or double equals true.
Okay.
It's just easier to read because you kind of can read it grammatically.
Okay, but they would only check this box though if they answered no to the yes no question.
So in that case, we would want to have the word not in front.
Okay.
So if not, answer yes, no, to
Okay.
keep it grammatical and not using the double equal sign, which is redundant.
Okay.
Okay, so after that, right here, we're going to put the version that happens if this part is true, right? So it's going to be a checked checkbox. So just open square bracket and then an X inside it. This is just the way to visually show a checkbox. So this is
Okay.
literally going to be shown on the screen. And I like to use a capital X. We could keep these boxes, and there's one that looks like it has an X in it, but the problem is that fonts are different on different computers, and it might not come out right. So it's kind of safer to just use something that we know will work in every font.
Okay.
We're also adding a space here, which I don't think we want to do, so I want to get rid of that space right there. And then, are there two spaces or just one? I can't tell. Looks like it's just one. Okay, so then after that checkbox, so just the same thing, curly sign and then percent. And again, we're not going to add an extra space there. We want to keep the space outside of it. I know it's easier to read a little bit, but this is actually going to literally put that in, so we have to be. So I would do else, and then another percent sign and a closing curly brace. And what do you think would go here?
Just open block statement like this.
Yeah. So it's a little neater if you have two spaces.
Yeah.
Takes more like the same space. Just but that's just totally optional. And then, can you think of anything else we might need here? If you can remember how it works in Mako, it's going to be similar. It's not the same like the Python if statement here. There's one more keyword we need.
I don't know, mandatory maybe.
So just end if is what.
Okay.
So we have to, because basically it needs to know when we're done using special Python statements, and that's what we're going to do with the end if.
Okay.
You don't need that in Python because the indentation works for that, but you could have indentation for other reasons, obviously, in a formatted document. So that's why we need the keyword.
Okay. And is that going in like curly braces or anything?
Yes. And we use the percent as well. So these are the two things you really need, just basically these two things. So I would put a space. It's a good idea to have that space. It sometimes causes problems when you don't, but mostly it just is easier to read. That's going to be the checkboxes.
Okay.
Let's scroll down a little bit. So I like the checkboxes for most of these. I think here in section 4, I don't think that really makes sense. So if you had radio buttons, I'm not sure the way you did this question.
I think I did drop down.
Okay. Perfect. So you use buttons. Okay. Buttons are fine too.
Oh, I use buttons, yeah.
Okay, so you could just put in reason for missing. Let's do that one too. I think it's good to get those two, and then we can try it and you can see a little bit more. So just delete that whole line on line 4. So in double curly braces, we would just put reason for missing, or reason underscore for missing, I think is the way you'd written it. And then space and then closing. There you go. Let's save, upload this, and run it, just so you get that loop. I like to use Google Drive Sync as one more layer here that helps me avoid having to like do the upload loop, which can be kind of time consuming.
Okay.
Let's start by just going, yeah, let's do that for now anyway. So go back to your playground. To upload it, we're not going to use that upload button, even though it's really tempting. I think seems like that should be the right thing. We have to go to folders, templates first. Click browse, and then wherever you have that saved. And then click upload. So let's try running our interview again. So we go back to the playground. You can use the back button on the nav bar. It's giving me a syntax error. That's interesting. Let's see if we can figure out why that is. Let's do save and run. Okay, let's check that out. There's a problem in our Word file.
Okay.
I think it's probably the word, and it actually gave us some context here. So let's just read that first line there.
Form, please printer type.
Right here, actually.
Right. Oh yeah. I was looking for the following tags end if. So does end if have to be one word like that?
You got it.
Okay. That's the issue that we have then. All right.
Okay. Cool. No more red. Well, these two are red, which is okay. We don't need those yet.
Okay.
So you can do save and run. So you see how this screen was triggered?
Mm.
Um,
Because we had it in the document.
exactly. Yeah. So that's a way to trigger stuff. It does happen if you just have it in the document. The reason why we would use it in the code block is so we can control the order, so it like makes more sense. We don't really want to trigger stuff just by whatever order it happens to be in the document usually.
Okay.
So you were remembering that this was a dropdown. I think that's a good instinct, although I might use radio buttons instead of a dropdown just because it's easier to select a radio button on a phone than it is to select from a dropdown menu. I think
Definitely.
the buttons don't work quite as well there.
Yeah, I think I gotta go through and just do some style stuff at the end. Suffix.
Our X there. So yeah, you might check the spacing a little bit.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Let me see. One more thing. Let's just go over how to trigger a question that is in the basic questions file. So let's go and make a change in our Word file and then a change in the YAML. Just one more small change.
Okay.
So we have a better selector for the court than we used to, but for now, you'll be popping up the original one that we had. So where it says D name of court, let's go ahead and turn off that underline again. And yeah, no border is the one we want. And in D, yeah, and then we're just going to write in. Do you remember what kind of curly braces we're going to use here? Yeah, double curly braces. That's right. And it's going to be courts plural 0. That's all we have to write here. Courts plural, and then bracket, square bracket 0 inside square brackets open and close.
Square brackets?
Yep.
Okay.
Courts is a list because there's some forms where people have to select 2 courts. And
Okay.
that's the notation for a list, is the square brackets. So we're saying the first thing in that list. This form, we don't need 2 quarts.
Okay.
Okay, so we can just save. As you noticed, we don't have to write a question for that yet. We don't have to mention that in our code block, I mean, because it's going to trigger something that defines that because of the file needs it.
Okay.
But let's say you wanted to ask that at a particular time, then you could actually just reference that you want to define quarts 0. That would do it. So we could
Okay.
put that in our code block. So that might be good anyway. So why don't we do that just to model that?
You want me to pull up the
Yeah, go
Microsoft
ahead and
Word?
upload the file first. Go ahead and do that
Okay.
because the order doesn't really matter there.
Okay.
Okay, so in our code block, which we have open there, let's make it before line 9. So let's do just a new line 9, yeah. And you can just write quarts square brackets 0. FYI, sometimes when you're working with objects, this is an object right here that we're trying to define. The object can be already, this is saying let's define this object. And sometimes there are questions that can define an object, and sometimes the question isn't defining an object. You're actually trying to trigger a question that gets an attribute of the object. So it'd be something like, for a person, for example, if a person's an object, we're using something like user 0.name.first. I'm just going to flag that, and you don't have to necessarily put that into context yet. Just leave that for now. This will work for what we need. So let's go ahead and do save and run. It was a good find yesterday, by the way. So, okay, so we needed this variable to find allowed quarts. So I forgot about that. Let's do the next thing you're gonna have to do is to start like going through and checking some of your variable names, because some of them we do use for more than one thing. So we do want them to match our style.
Okay.
So let me get you a link which has the variable names.
Okay. Just to let you know, I got to hop off soon. I have an interview at 3 o'clock. So.
Okay. Yeah. No problem. We won't take longer, and you'll be able to look at this later too. I'll put it on the YouTube channel if that's okay.
Yep.
So I'm just going to get you this list of field names. What do I have here? Why is that 0? Oh, I see. I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry. And I won't try to keep you like up to the minute. So this might be the last thing we do.
Okay.
All right. So if you just go and visit that link, I'm just going to show you how to read it a bit. I just put on the chat. So these are variable names that you should try to follow this guideline for how to do it. I could have
Okay.
more example blocks than I do now. But what I want you to copy is if you go a little further down, you'll see there's an example for how to get the allowed quarts variable specifically. So scroll a little bit more. So you can actually copy that whole block right there.
This one?
And, yeah, and put that into your interview.
Where should I put it?
You can put it in maybe right there underneath. I like to keep the code block order question at the top, but other things, it actually doesn't matter the order unless you have 2 questions that answer the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that should do it. That should solve that problem. So we could actually just hit save and then refresh our, oh no, you have to do save and run because you already closed that one, which is okay.
Hmm.
So, and then later, what I would say is when you have time, let's go back and look at that question again and delete some of the quirks that don't make sense.
Okay.
For example, you can't get a motion to dismiss against an eviction, and you don't need to do it in, it never can be in probate and family court, juvenile court, or land court. Those are cases that don't hear evictions.
That makes sense.
So we can take those off of our list. Okay, so now we're back to our questions, and let's go through to the end just because it won't take too long, I think, at this point. Just had one more question. So homework for you would be to look at that list of variables that I just sent you, figure out how you can get the county that the court's actually in. Like that's an attribute you can pull out from the court.
Okay.
So I would look to find that, and then look at if there's a way to use our questions that we already have written for how to get the name of the user of the form too, and the
Okay.
users. I think I have an example on that page for getting an address block. So this form, just so you know, this form is not sacred. This is a form that was written by a nonprofit legal aid organization, same one Caroline works for, Mass Legal Help. And
Okay.
you can change anything that you like about it. If you think you're changing the substance, let's talk, because we want it to have all the same information. But the formatting, there's no sacred formatting on this at all.
Okay.
So like one thing I know right away, like you could go really tediously through that address block. Let's scroll down just so you can see what I mean. You see here it asks for like a bunch of different parts of a person's address. There's a function in docassemble that lets you spit out a formatted address. So there, you could just delete that whole, there's like 5 lines there that you could delete that have these ones here, right? Like you can delete all of those at least, and use one line to get the address formatted in the right place. So you can do that kind of thing. And let me show you, I know you have to get off the call, but I'll link you a repository you can look at that is also using a docx file that shows off some of those things that you could do.
Awesome.
It might be really helpful to look at that just so you can see. Hold on. We got a bunch of new repositories on there now, so I have to scroll a little further down. So I will put it on the Slack so you don't lose it.
All right.
And this is the whole package. And then I'm going to link you specifically to the file that you can look at. So you can see how to use those functions in the docx file. So if you're trying to figure out how do I do something, you're going to look at the docx file here, and you're going to look at the questions file here. I'm going to link that now next, so you can get both those direct links. And you can kind of see, well, what's a way I could do that in a docx file? And it's a really short interview, so it should be a little easier to scan it and find the part you need and then compare and do the same thing in yours.
Okay.
All right. I know you have to go, but any questions? I've been talking a lot.
No, that's good. That was helpful to just work through that. If I have any more questions, I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free to post them on the code channel. If I don't answer them, somebody will, I think. And I'm happy to answer them though. And I think Sinead and Finola are both a little further along and doing the same thing as you, working in a docx file. So you might reach out to them too and see what things they ran into and how they've solved those problems.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Quinn.
Good luck with your interview.
Thank you.
Bye.